Hello and welcome. 66 years after independence, what would the father of the nation make of Indian polity today? As we celebrated his birth anniversary this week, how do we actually take his ideas out of history books and make them relevant today? How much do we actually even know of the man behind the Mahatma? Joining me tonight is historian Dr. Ram Guha, who's just released his new book, Gandhi Before India. Thanks very much for coming in, Dr. Guha.
Thank you, Sonia.
One aspect which really struck me in this book is that how much Mahatma Gandhi, as a young man even, he retained so much of the orthodoxies of his caste, yet completely rejected one aspect which was crucial at that time, especially the discrimination between different communities, especially with Muslims. And interestingly, even in South Africa, when he had brought the Indian movement together, he recognized attempts to try and split it when you had a group saying that, that he only represented the Hindu aspect. And he pointed to what was happening in India and said that this is what the British are trying to do there. A message particularly relevant today when we see what's happening in Muzaffarnagar, when we hear warnings again and again that these elections may be the most communal we've seen in recent times.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mahatma Gandhi lived and died for Hindu-Muslim harmony. Of course, religious pluralism more broadly. He also had Jewish friends, Christian friends. His first patron in South Africa was a Parsi called Rustamji. And as I show in my book, when he had no funds, it was the Parsi philanthropist Ratan Tata, not the current Ratan Tata, but his ancestor who bailed him out. So Gandhi had this extraordinary ability to cultivate friendships and develop understanding and respect across religious boundaries. It's vitally relevant in India, Sonia, as you point out, but it's also relevant all over the world. I mean, if you look at the treatment of minorities in Pakistan, if you look at the troubles between Jews and Arabs in Israel, if you look at the rising tide of Christian fundamentalism in some parts of Latin America and North America, I think Gandhi's message of interfaith harmony and mutual respect and tolerance, I think is phenomenally relevant. Of course, it's more relevant in our country because of the complexity of the religious dynamics. And as you say, at election time is when politicians start playing sectarian and dirty games. But the great thing about Gandhi is that he's not an Indian. He's a universal figure. Even if India forgets him, he will be remembered elsewhere.
And it is in election campaigns, especially in Indian election campaigns, we had President Obama use him in his election campaign. But the Gandhian ideal, or even the Gandhian rhetoric, some would say, has disappeared.
It has, and in many ways, of course, our politicians daily violate him. I mean, in terms of personality, no one could be further from Gandhi than his fellow Gujarati Narendra Modi, because Gandhi listened. Narendra Modi only speaks. Forget the Hindu-Muslim side, but just the megalomania and the self-obsession of Modi. But likewise with the Congress party, Gandhi, by the way, kept his own children scrupulously away from politics and even from financial gain. He willed the royalties to his writings, which are incalculably valuable, to a trust and not to his family. So Indian politicians, by and large, deny Gandhi every day, but other Indians affirm him. I mean, if you look at the extraordinary work of Ella Bhatt and Seva, if you look at such wonderfully selfless social workers like Abhay and Rani Bang, who in Gadchiroli, the doctors who have eliminated leprosy and malaria among Adivasis. Look at the environmental movement, people like Medha Patkar. And look at young Indians. I mean, one of the most heartening thing is that when my book was released in Delhi a couple of days ago, there were so many young people. Of course, it was nice to see some of my friends, my contemporaries, middle-aged men and women like myself, but young people are curious to know about him. So I think the great thing about Gandhi is, even if India denies him, even if the official policy is only to remember him on 2nd October and go to Rajghat and put some flowers, somehow his message of pluralism, interfaith harmony, his opposition to gender discrimination, I mean, it's quite extraordinary that Gandhi brought more women into public life than, Marxists did, than Stalin or Lenin or Churchill. I think there are various ways in which ordinary people discover, rediscover, reinterpret and affirm Gandhi across the world.
So his message is always of hope, even when it seemed that there was no way out when he was first battling. The message always of hope, even at a time when, say, a fellow intellectual, U.R. Ananthamurthy, faces so much criticism for saying that he wouldn't want to live particularly in Modi's India. And he made the point that I wouldn't even want to live particularly in India led by Rahul Gandhi. So that the growth of the intolerance has also risen, not just of physical, but actually intellectual intolerance.
And verbal intolerance, animosity and anger. I mean, Gandhi was an extraordinarily compassionate, and he believed in dialogue, he believed in listening. When he ran his journal, Indian Opinion in South Africa and later Harijan and Young India here, when he came back home, he would give huge amounts of space to his critics. He would say, someone has written in. And he would reproduce the criticisms of one of Gandhi's ideas, on non-violence or on health, and he would say, and he would patiently, carefully try to argue back. He would explain his arguments. Sometimes he would elaborate, sometimes he would refine them. But as one historian said, Gandhi's was a dialogic imagination. His politics is one of dialogue, reciprocal understanding, listening. And also Gandhi used a wonderful phrase, the beauty of compromise. I think one of the things lacking in our politics today, and this is particularly true of the Congress and the BJP, I have never seen such poisonous partisanship. You know, the name calling by both sides. I wouldn't want to single out one. But even on crucial national issues like national security, a corruption act, Gandhi would say, Gandhi was always prepared to have a dialogue with his adversary, even the most racist adversary. General Smuts in the case of South Africa, the viceroys here, the run-up to partition, he was willing to talk to Jinnah. He kept the dialogue with Ambedkar going continuously. So I think that is one of the great things about Gandhi, is that his imagination is a dialogic imagination. It is not a monologic imagination.